But if there's ever a trap game, this is a trap game to me because Dallas is coming up. And I already get the sense that the Eagles are going to be cautious with Avonte Maddox, Jordan Mailata, players like that. We know Jake Elliott's not going to kick.
You got your Mac and Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365, and there he is in front of his brick wall, ready to talk Eagles football with us, Les Bowen from NJ.com. How are you this morning, Les?
Just great, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, Les. Good. With Jody, by the way, we used to have a brick wall behind us when
way back when, yes.
It's like a 1970s comedy club.
Before we got to go down the shore and hang out at Oceans.
Exactly.
Well, I have my nice screened-in porch here, which I wasn't able to use enough during the summer because it was so ridiculously hot.
It was.
So I'm getting some use out of this porch. Darn it.
Yeah. And you probably couldn't get it earlier since I didn't think we were going to see the sun there ever again, right. Les. But yes. We finally broken through. And the Eagles are going to get some heat, although it's going to be climate controlled for the game in Arizona. But I want to talk about trap games with you, Les. I mean, the head coach says they're real. He never admits when they're coming. But if there's ever a trap game, this is a trap game to me because Dallas is coming up. And I already get the sense that the Eagles are going to be cautious with Avonte Maddox, Jordan Mailata, players like that. We know Jake Elliott's not going to kick. Any concern over the infamous trap game here?
I guess you're always a little concerned about that, John, but I really think this is not a great team they're playing.
Yeah, I
just
agree.
Don't see the defensive line that's going to put a lot of pressure on Jalen Hurts. They do have a good defensive backfield. He could throw interceptions or something, I guess. Offensively, it's kind of Kyler Murray runs around and makes something happen. If Jonathan Gannon really gets bumfoozled by that, I'll be kind of surprised. But I have to say, I haven't covered an Eagles win. Well, nobody has ever covered an Eagles win at this stadium.
Yeah.
You know, ever since they moved to that giant Jiffy Pop Dome in Glendale, the Eagles are 0-4 in the regular season and 0-1 in the playoffs. Yeah. Very painful NFC Championship loss where they scored late to take the lead and then gave it up. You know, so strange things happen. They've lost to Kevin Cobb out there.
Yeah.
You know, the old stadium, the one in Tempe, I just barely covered a little bit there. You know, the Cardinals used to be in the NFC East, obviously, and they played in Tempe at Arizona State. And the Eagles won there all the time. But, you know, this stadium has been a real mystery to the Eagles. You know, who knows? Anything can happen. I don't see any special reason to be nervous about this. I think the team they played last week was better and had them down 14-0. Of course, they were at home, and that helps. But in the kind of weather they had, I'm not sure how much it really helped. You know, it was kind of an impediment to coming back from 14-0. But, you know, I think they should win this game. And if it is a trap game, you know, they'll beat themselves, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No, 0 for 5 is 0 for 5. There's no good way to slice that. But the reason why I can't put all that much emphasis on it, I'm not saying I'm discarding it, but this team, these players, this coaching staff, yes, they lost out there. And Jalen, I believe it was Jalen's first ever start in the NFL. Was his first or second? I know he came in against Green Bay off the bench for Carson Wentz. Yeah. Was there a game before they played the Cardinals?
I think he had that New Orleans game before Arizona, you know, where he beat New Orleans in his first start.
Gotcha.
I was trying to think last night why I don't remember much from that Arizona game 2 years ago.
Yeah,
and then it dawned on me. It was during the pandemic. I didn't go. Nobody went. You know, it's almost like you forget how different the world was 2 years ago. You know, I had totally forgotten that game ever existed, you know, because I wasn't there. I wrote about it from my couch.
Yeah, you do forget those. And it was a shootout, too. It was a shootout. Yeah, Oklahoma shootout. Yeah. Kyler versus Jalen.
Yes.
You know, Jalen Hurts, By the way, A.J. Brown, I love A.J. because we brought that up to A.J. yesterday, Les, about, oh, you've never won in State Farm Stadium. And A.J.'s like, what does that have to do with me? You know.
And that's
so
true
many,
of a lot of these guys,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah. So when you don't play a team, and they used to play them all the time, as you mentioned, when they're in the NFC East, but now the vast majority of these players, obviously the Kelseys and Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, they know, but the vast majority have no idea about the history with this particular team. I did think it was interesting, Les, that Jalen Hurts felt the need to bring up the Cardinals because nobody was asking him questions about the Cardinals. Do you think he was sensing people? And obviously these were reporters, but in general, do you think he had that sense maybe around the building that people are trying to look past this team a little bit?
I hadn't thought about that in terms of the team itself, but that's a very good point. You know, that could very well be. It was kind of extraordinary for him to do that. I think he wanted to, it seemed to me to be a bid to make sure nobody out in Arizona got the idea that the Eagles were not taking the Cardinals seriously, which was kind of advanced thinking for Jalen Hurts. You know, I never thought of him really caring that much about stuff like that, but I guess he probably does. He did talk on his Manning Cast appearance about seeing himself in Nick Saban and how much he feels like he's like Nick Saban. And that was kind of a Nick Saban-like thing to do. You know, extend your press conference and talk about the other deep. And actually, it wasn't true that no one had asked him about the Cardinals.
No, we asked him about
Kyler Murray. Yeah. We'd asked him about Zach Ertz. We had not asked him about the Cardinals' defense, and that was what he wanted to talk about. But it seemed to me to be a sort of base covering. You know, I don't want the Cardinals' defense out there thinking they're not. You know, look at this. Jalen Hurts isn't even concerned about us. You know. That's how I took it. But you might be right. It could have been a message within the building as well.
And if that's the case, that's what a quarterback and a leader is supposed to do, is make sure that all bases are being covered. So I got no issue with the quarterback extending a press conference just so he can bring the Cardinals defense up. Les, I'm more worried about the Eagles defense this week against Kyler Murray.
Okay.
I know they practice against Jalen Hurts, but John can tell you from firsthand experience standing on the sideline, Eagle practice is not quite game speed these days. So working against Jalen is nice, but they have not come close in game to playing anybody like Kyler Murray. Give me some reasons why this defense, and they've changed some players, and the guys they brought in have played real well, will be better at controlling the chaos-like atmosphere that Kyler Murray can cause other defenses and has caused this Eagle defense when they played previously.
Well, I think if you stay disciplined, you know, if they're going to have a plan, they're going to have a spy, I guess, or something, you know, to account for him. You stay in your lanes, you stick to your coverage when he's scrambling, and, you know, you rally to the ball when he has it. Somebody might miss him, you know, and the next guy might have to make the tackle. And I do think over the years, good defenses that I've seen have been able to handle situations like this. It's not like he's not Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he is controlled a lot of the time. There are times when he gets loose and has amazing games, but you know, they're a struggling team for a reason. He doesn't have great weapons. DeAndre Hopkins is still suspended. I don't think his offensive line is anything to write home about.
And they're banged up too, Les.
Yeah.
They have a lot of issues.
You know, I think you put the pressure on him. You make him worry about you more than you worrying about him. You know, I just think, you know, looks like Darius Slay is going to play, right, John? That seems to be
he's going to play.
So, you know, it could happen. I mean, it's possible that he's going to run around and he might create a touchdown or two. But if he's going to, like, totally, like I said, leave Jonathan Gannon flat-footed, I'll be shocked. I mean, I think they're much more affected by quarterbacks who can, you know, really stand in the pocket and assess their options and, look for secondary receivers and things like that. And I don't see that as Kyler Murray's strength. I don't see him all the time. I might have my impression of him might not be complete, but, I just don't think these one-man band kind of teams are going to really be that big a deal.
You talk about Kyler and Jalen, they're not going to play against each other, obviously, but it's so interesting to me because they have so many connections in the fact that they're both Texas kids. Kyler from Dallas area, Jalen from Houston, but they were both great high school players in Texas. They both
Oklahoma,
started, Yeah, well, they both started elsewhere. Kyler started at Texas A&M, people forget, and Jalen started at Alabama. Then they both went to Lincoln Riley. Kyler first. He won the Heisman Trophy. Jalen was second in the Heisman Trophy voting at Oklahoma. Obviously, Kyler was the number one pick. Jalen was a second-round pick. But, Kyler's got a lot of talent, Les. Am I overstating that? And maybe this is because I'm around Jalen Hurts all the time, and so are you. Mm-hmm. I think Jalen Hurts is better now. Am I crazy to say that?
Oh, I would take him over Kyler Murray to run an NFL offense. Yeah, I just don't think, like I said, I think Kyler runs around and makes something happen. I'm with you on Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think there's a lot going on there in terms of any real great plan that's going to, revitalize or rework the NFL. It's I just don't think you win a lot of playoff games playing the way they do. And I haven't seen any real evidence that Murray can, make the kind of progress that Jalen has made as a passer and as a, and then there's the whole leadership thing. Kyler Murray had that whole thing with his contract.
He's got where the study.
They want him to study. That's I'm going to say that's not a problem with Jalen Hurts at all.
No.
So I think Kyler Murray was a flashier name coming out of college, and they decided to make him their guy, and they've gotten some benefit from that. He's certainly not a flop or anything, but he's not. I don't know of anybody that would include him.
Now here's the problem, Les. But here's the problem.
Who includes him in their top 6 or 8 quarterbacks in the NFL?
I don't think anybody does.
Well, right. Are we elevating Jalen Hurts to a top 6 or 8 quarterback in the NFL?
He has played that way far this season.
But I'm not.
I think you have to preface it that way.
4 games. 4 games.
Yeah,
where did you have where did you have Jalen ranked coming into the year?
Oh, I would say probably very near Kyler Murray, probably 12th, 13th, something like that. But it's 4 games, but I'm saying right now, if I were going to rank the top 6 or 8 quarterbacks in the league, taking into account this season, I would certainly put Jalen Hurts in there. And that doesn't mean, that that's going to stay the way for 13 more games. But
here's my problem, Les, because I'm with you. Now, I would have been a little bit lower than you starting the season. I probably would have had Jalen 15, maybe 15 to 20, somewhere in that range. Yeah. And he's just exploded. And as you said, through 4 games, it is what it is. The sample size, he's been top 6 or top 8, but we have to see if he can sustain it. But here's my problem. Kyler Murray just signed for $230 million. And if I'm Nicole Lynn, Jalen Hurts' agent, we start talking extension after the season. I'm saying, if he continues to play like this, bang, starts at 231 at least, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's certainly going to be that's the big story of the offseason, I guess, for the Eagles right now. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen the rest of the season, but how they handle that, we've talked on this show before about all these moves that Howie Roseman made this offseason, all the people he signed that were such good signings. And some of them were bargain signings, like Bradbury, but others weren't, like Hassan Reddick and trading for A.J. Brown and then signing him to a deal. These are things that he couldn't do last year because they had $33.8 million in dead cap money going to Carson Wentz. You're kind of going to be back in that situation, and that's a big thing in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
When you have to pay the quarterback, it really limits what else you can do, and you'd better be drafting really good players, because you're not going to be able to go out and sign premier free agents every year and, make this, suddenly a strength that was a weakness. It's going to be tight. And there's some other deals that are up too, that are going to be real interesting to see what they do in this offseason. However, we don't know what the cap is going to be next year.
Yeah, it's going up, but
it's going up.
So that'll help.
That'll help. But yeah, it's going to be Howie's going to have the wizard cap on for this one. It's really you make a very good point.
All right, let me ask you last, and John, you please jump in too, because I know previously when we were talking about the fact that the Eagles weren't able to step on the throat of an opponent, score fourth quarter points, just go ahead and put the game away, continue on when they've had unbelievable first halves, mostly second quarters. John chalked it up to human nature. You're ahead. You're playing a little conservative. You don't want to take a chance because you don't want to make a big mistake. So you just go ahead and win the game. Doesn't matter. You're 4-0. Doesn't matter really how many points you win by. It's human nature to understand why you have a lead. You don't continue to pile on. Is it human nature to look past the Cardinals? Listening to you two guys, it seems rather reasonable that they're not a very good team, and you've got a 3-1 Cowboy team coming in next week, divisional opponent, most hated rival. Do I need to go on? Is the human nature of looking past the Cardinals something that needs to be kept an eye on all Sunday versus Arizona?
I don't know. The Dallas thing to me is always a much bigger deal with the fans and the media than it is the players.
Okay.
An awful lot of these players, there are a lot of new guys who are new to this team. I don't think A.J. Brown.
Yeah. Well, I know he doesn't care
about the Cowboys,
Yeah.
And half of these players grew up in Texas. They didn't grow up hating the Cowboys or wanting to beat the Cowboys or anything like that. I don't know. The first point you raised about the second halves is something that still hasn't been fully resolved. Last week, again, an amazing second quarter, and then they kind of struggled. They did add to the lead. They did score fourth quarter points for the first time all season, but they also, all of a sudden, with about 4 minutes left, they let a team that was dead in the water right back, kind of within one score. Injuries had a lot to do with that, I think, to the Eagles, and the fact that they couldn't kick a field goal that would have given them an 11-point lead at one point. But nonetheless, they still haven't really put a team away. Like you said, and I think it's a young team that's learning and a coaching staff that's learning how to do this. They didn't exactly just sit in Washington, they did the opposite. They sat on the lead against the Vikings.
Yeah.
And didn't throw. Washington, they just kept chucking it downfield every possession of the second half and couldn't build any rhythm because Washington had adjusted a little bit to that and, wasn't letting those passes be completed as much. So, they're trying different things out, and that is a concern to me that they haven't really played a second half that you could look at and be as impressed as you are with these second quarters, which just seem like, suddenly this light goes on and they're the best team in football for 15 minutes, and then halftime comes and they aren't.
Yeah. My kind of take on that is, the human nature aspect, as Jody pointed out, I always say, but there was no sense of urgency. These games have personalities less,
right.
And
right.
they didn't feel threatened by Minnesota. They didn't feel threatened by Washington. You got to look that to me is the human nature part, when you don't feel a sense of urgency. And then, like, if the Vikings return that field goal for a touchdown, I think the Eagles get the sense of urgency back. They probably go right down the field and score because they were a better football team.
Yeah.
But you never know. I want to take that sense of urgency thought to the coaching staff you mentioned. We talk about Jalen Hurts. Shane Steichen, if Jalen Hurts continues to play like this, Shane Steichen's getting a lot of phone calls, Les Bowen. We already know Jonathan Gannon's getting a lot of phone calls. He got them last year. And the Eagles are now number 2 in defense. They got 16 sacks, 10 turnovers. Point I'm trying to make here, we saw Doug Peterson when he lost Frank Reich and John DiFilippo. You start losing assistant coaches, good assistant coaches, that becomes difficult. The Eagles, I didn't expect this championship window to be open, but there have to be a sense of urgency to take advantage of this situation.
Boy, that's something I've learned in sports over and over and over again, guys, in different sports that I've covered. You think, well, this is, when I covered Eric Lindros in the Flyers, you always thought, well, he's young, they have more time to, if they don't win it this year, and then with Donovan McNabb, it was always the same thing with me early in his career. It's like, well, they didn't win this NFC championship game, but there'll be another one next year, and you end up at the end of the day looking around, wondering where it all went, and you do have to strike when the iron is hot. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know that one of these other NFC East teams isn't going to suddenly, maybe it's the Giants, maybe it's Dallas. I don't think it's going to be Washington, is going to figure it out and suddenly become, an impassable object on your way to the Super Bowl. This is a great year to be really good because I don't think there is a great team in the NFC.
No.
And the AFC, there are some really good teams. Buffalo's probably a little better than the Eagles.
Neither of which played last night, who I thought both had a chance to be playoff teams this year. How ugly was that freaking game last night?
Oh, my God.
That was rough. That was a rough watch.
Holy mackerel.
So,
Frank Reich might be the offensive coordinator here next year.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you brought up what happens if Shane Steichen leaves. I think Frank's going to be available, frankly.
Yeah.
And people mention Vic Fangio. I don't know, for defense.
Yeah, that was a good fire, Vic Fangio for Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, wow.
But remember when I was on this show at the week after the opener, and I was talking about my column that I wrote about how somebody had hacked Jonathan Gannon's Wikipedia entry.
Yeah.
All these insulting things about how he tries to be a football coach. That seems like a long time ago.
That is a very long time ago. Yeah. Eagles fans don't like Jonathan Gannon because he doesn't blitz that much, although he is blitzing a little bit more this year.
I think they're going to warm to him,
Yeah. They lead the league in sacks, so that's what they want. They lead the league in turnovers, I believe. They have the best turnover ratio. That's what they want. What more could you ask for? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
but they can.
There's an element of the fan base here, and I don't mean to malign everybody when I say this, but there's an element of the fan base here that will never move beyond the Buddy Ryan era of football. You don't win. You're not going to run for 200 yards every week, and you're not going to win by.
They might run for 200 every week if they wanted to, but they don't want to. That's the problem.
But I think Miles Sanders would break down if
he would.
To do that. But you're not going to blitz every down. Quarterbacks and offenses are much too sophisticated for that now. You just open yourself up, when you do that. The golden fleece is to get great pressure without blitzing, or by blitzing one guy in a gap they weren't prepared for, or something like that.
Or zone blitzing, bring somebody and drop somebody else, which they do with Hassan Reddick. You got to throw a curveball every once in a while.
Yes.
So I agree with you.
Here's where I part ways with Eagle Nation and their over-aggressive nature. Look at defense. If you lead the league in sacks, who the hell cares how many times you blitz? The result is what matters. And if you're numero uno in sacks, because I love sacks too, more than Johnny Mack. he gives more credit to pressures and hurries than I do. I want to know about the end result. You can never have a bad play with a sack. That's always a good result. The result's only the thing that matters. The way that you get there. Oh, it has to be a blitzing linebacker or safety. No, it doesn't. If you get there with your front four and you get the quarterback on the ground, that's the only thing that matters, right, Les?
Yeah, it's the better way. If you get there with 4, as Les says, that's what every defensive coordinator wants. You want to get home with 4. And the great Vic Fangio says that. And everybody's following Vic, man. Half the league plays its damn defense. It's amazing. But he got fired for Nathaniel Hackett.
Boy, that looks like a terrible idea. You know that.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. They hired a coach to recruit a player. That's not the way to hire a football coach. And once they didn't get Aaron Rodgers, it's like, what do we do now? That was a bad decision.
And they clearly, I feel bad for Russell Wilson. He looks washed up. I doubt that he's really washed up. But you see plays where the receiver's running a different pattern than he's expecting. And, it just seems like total chaos out there. I think, he's confused, and he's only been in that one, situation his whole career. Now he's in a different one. I don't think he has, and Aaron Rodgers would take control of the deal and kind of remake the offense in his own image, whatever they were trying to do.
Yeah, he would be the offensive coordinator. So
I don't think Russ. I don't think Russ does that, and I think Russ is like looking around, like, what am I doing here? How did I get here? Someone get me out of here. He's
going nowhere fast with that new contract he just signed. I can guarantee you that. He got his release from Seattle. Oh, he's staying in the Mile High for a little bit. All right, Les. We need you on the record. We only got a couple minutes left with you here. They're 4-0, and they've been an impressive 4-0. They are, for my money, the best team in the National Football League right now. A very fluid situation could change within 1 week. Buffalo gets a 55-point win this week, which, by the way, do you see that? Pittsburgh is a double-digit underdog or a 2-touchdown underdog for the first time in, like, decades. They're more than 14-point underdog against Buffalo this week. So Buffalo could be phenomenal and win. Eagles could lose a heartbreaker out there in Arizona. And boom, of course, flips. They're not the number 1 team anymore, but they have been for me through 4 weeks. So it's a 2-part question, Mr. Bowen. Number 1, are the Eagles right now, as we speak here on Birds 365, leading into week number 5, should they be the number 1 ranked team in the NFL? And number 2, do they stay there because they get a win this week against Arizona?
Well, number 1, even though they're the only undefeated team, I don't think you can be that simplistic. There are teams with better pedigrees that have, Buffalo and Kansas City, to me, if the Eagles were going to play either one of those teams this week, the Eagles would be underdogs, I think, and deservedly so. So I would put the Eagles right about number 3. Allowing for the possibility that they might be better than those other 2 teams. But those other 2 teams have, it didn't just show up this year and start playing well, Number 2, I do see a win. I would say maybe like 32-23, something like that. Again, a lot of things can happen. Maybe they'll figure out a way to make Jack Driscoll much more of a liability than he was last Sunday. But I just, I'll take the Nick Sirianni over Cliff Kingsbury. I'll take Jalen Hurts over Kyler Murray. I just, I don't see any real logical reason to take the Cardinals to win this game.
State Farm Stadium, Les. State Farm Stadium.
That's the only bugaboo. I have never covered a win there, so we'll see.
We'll see if the Eagles get one this weekend. Les, great stuff. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks.
Thanks you, Les. Much.